Imagine a stepmother slapping you until you are dizzy, locking you in a room, and hiding your phone so you cannot tell anyone. She thought she had silenced me, but she did not know my best friend had already seen the fresh bruises on FaceTime. My friend had already called my grandmother, the police, and a lawyer. That night, instead of breaking me, became the night her entire perfect image collapsed in front of the whole family. It was exactly 6:41 in the evening, just 3 days after the new year had settled into the gray slush of winter. When my phone lit up on the kitchen island, the screen buzzed against the cold granite, a harsh, artificial vibration that sliced through the silence of my apartment. I did not need to look at the caller ID to know who it was. My body knew. There is a specific kind of dread that settles in the stomach, a cold weight that feels like swallowing a stone, which only arrives when a certain ghost from the past decides to reach out. My name is Madison Whitaker. I am in my mid-20s now, standing in a one-bedroom apartment in downtown Denver that I pay for with my own money. It is tidy, it is quiet. The air smells like lemon zest and coffee, not fear. But when I looked down and saw the name Valerie flashing on the screen, the air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. It was a text message. Of course it was. Valerie does not call unless she needs an audience, and a text allows her to craft the narrative before I can even speak. I picked up the phone. The message was long, formatted with the excessive cheerfulness that characterizes every manipulative woman who is trying to sell you a lie. "Hi, sweetie. I hope the city is treating you well. Dad and I were thinking we are way overdue for a little catch-up. Just a small family dinner. Nothing fancy. Just us. We booked a table at the Monarch in Aurora for 7:30 tonight. We really need to talk about the future of the family house, and we want your input. Love you." I stared at the words, "love you." The audacity of those 2 words almost made me laugh, but it was a dry, humorless sound that died in my throat. The Monarch. It was a steakhouse in Aurora, Colorado. It was the kind of place where the lighting is dim to hide the prices, and the waiters wear white vests and speak in hushed tones. It was a place designed for performances, for people who want to be seen eating dinner more than they want to actually eat. It was the perfect stage for Valerie. I looked up from the phone and let my eyes drift across my kitchen island. It is a small island, fake marble, but it serves its purpose. Tonight, it was not serving food. It was serving justice. Spread out across the surface were stacks of paper, thick, heavy files held together by metal clips and rubber bands. There were bank statements with lines highlighted in neon yellow. There were property tax records. There were emails printed out on crisp white paper, dates and times circled in red ink. And sitting on top of the chaos were 2 pristine manila envelopes. I ran a finger along the edge of the first envelope. I had written 1 word on the front in black marker: Dad. I touched the second envelope. This one was thicker. It felt heavy, like it was holding something alive inside. On this one, I had written, Grandma May. I was not scared. That was the surprise. For years, the mere thought of Valerie made my heart hammer against my ribs like a trapped bird. I used to be the girl who would hide in her room to avoid the sound of Valerie's heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I used to be the girl who flinched when a cabinet door was slammed too hard. But as I stood there, reading her invitation to a family dinner, my pulse was steady. My hands were still. I was not scared, because I knew something she did not. She thought she was inviting a victim to dinner. She thought she was summoning the scared little girl she had kicked out 3 years ago. She did not know she was inviting a prosecutor. I unlocked my phone and typed my reply. I did not offer an excuse. I did not ask who else would be there. I did not add a smiley face to soften the blow or an exclamation point to feign excitement. I typed 2 letters. Okay. I hit send. It was the perfect response. It gave her nothing. It was a blank canvas onto which she could project whatever she wanted. She would read it and think I was submissive. She would think I was coming to agree to whatever scheme she had cooked up to sell the house and pocket the money. Okay. I set the phone down and let out a long, slow breath. This would be the first time I had seen my stepmother face to face since the night it happened. The night We always capitalized it in our heads, my friends and I. My memory flickered, unbidden, to that evening 3 years ago. I could feel the phantom sensation of heat blooming across my left cheek. I could feel the shock of it, the way my head had snapped to the side. Not from the pain, but from the sheer violence of the act. I remembered the look in her eyes. Not rage, but cold. Clinical calculation. I remembered stumbling back, clutching my face, my eyes wide and wet. I remembered reaching for my phone, desperate to call my dad, to call anyone. And then I remembered her hand snatching it away. "You are not telling lies to anyone," she had hissed, her voice low and terrifyingly calm. Then came the click of the lock. The door to the guest room had slammed shut, and I heard the turn of the key from the outside. I was 21 years old, and she had locked me in a room like a misbehaving toddler. I remembered pounding on the door, screaming that this was illegal, that she could not do this. I remembered listening to her footsteps walk away, taking my phone, my connection to the world, down the hallway. She had put my phone in the safe. She had turned up the volume on the television downstairs so the neighbors would not hear me screaming. She had sat down on the sofa, poured herself a glass of wine, and waited for my father to come home so she could tell him her version of the story before I even had a chance to speak. She thought she had won. She thought that by taking my phone, she had taken my voice. I looked away from the files on the counter and turned toward the open living room of my apartment. "I want to talk to you for a second." "Yes, you, the one listening to this? Have you ever lived in a house where the adults controlled everything? Not just the money or the rules, but the narrative? Have you ever lived with someone who monitors your phone, times your trips to the grocery store, and tells you who you are allowed to call, but to the outside world, they just look like a concerned, loving parent? Imagine a woman who smiles at the neighbors and bakes cookies for the church fundraiser. But the moment the front door closes, she turns into a warden. Imagine a woman who hits you hard enough to leave a mark, then hides your phone so you cannot take a picture, so you cannot call for help, so you have to sit in the silence and wonder if maybe you are crazy. Maybe you did provoke her. Maybe you are just, as she always said, too sensitive. If you have ever been labeled a troublemaker just for trying to speak the truth, I need you to listen to this story, because the dinner I am about to walk into is not a reconciliation. It is not a peace offering. It is an ambush. But this time, I am the one lying in wait. My phone buzzed again, snapping me back to the present. It was not Valerie this time. "Ava, you sure you are ready for this? I can be there in 20 minutes. I have the car running." I smiled, a real smile this time. Ava, my best friend since the 7th grade, the girl who knew where the bodies were buried because she helped me dig the graves. I typed back, "I am ready. Stick to the plan. I will see you there." Another notification popped up, a single emoji from Grandma May. It was just a thumbs up, simple, direct, lethal. Valerie had made a fatal error that night 3 years ago. She had assumed that I was alone. She assumed that because she had physically taken the device from my hand, the information stopped flowing. She did not know that 10 minutes before she stormed up the stairs, 10 minutes before she slapped me, I had been on FaceTime with Ava. Ava had seen the bruises from the previous week. Ava had seen the fear in my eyes. And when the call abruptly cut off and I did not text back, Ava did not wait. She did not hesitate. She called my grandmother. She called the police. She called a lawyer. Valerie thought she was locking a scared girl in a room to silence her. She did not realize she was locking herself in a cage with a ticking time bomb, and the timer had been set by a 70-year-old woman in New Mexico and a 21-year-old barista who takes zero nonsense from anyone. I walked over to the microwave and stared at my reflection in the stainless steel door. The distortion made my face look longer, thinner, but I recognized the eyes. They were not the red-rimmed, puffy eyes of the girl who used to cry into her pillow so her dad would not hear. These were clear eyes, cold eyes. I looked down at my outfit. I had chosen a black dress. High neck, long sleeves, sharp tailoring. It looked professional. It looked like I was going to a funeral, or perhaps an execution. It was armor. I reached out and gathered the files. The paper felt dry and rough against my fingertips. Inside these envelopes was 3 years of work, 3 years of digging through trash, 3 years of recording conversations, 3 years of tracking bank transfers and forged signatures. Valerie wanted to talk about the future of the house. That was code. That meant she wanted to sell the house my mother had designed, the house my grandmother had paid for, and she wanted to use the money to fund her lifestyle while cutting Grandma May out of the picture entirely. She thought she could bully my father into agreeing, and she thought she could guilt me into silence with a free steak dinner and some fake tears about family unity. She had no idea that the house was no longer hers to sell. She had no idea that Grandma May was not the senile old woman she pretended to be, and she certainly had no idea that the girl she had bullied for 5 years was now a certified paralegal who knew the property laws of Colorado better than she knew the back of her own hand. I slid the envelopes into my oversized leather tote bag. I checked my pocket for my voice recorder. It was there, fully charged. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of my clean, safe apartment one last time. I was leaving my sanctuary. I was going back into the war zone. But this time, I was not bringing a knife to a gunfight. I was bringing a tank. 3 years ago, I said aloud to the empty room, my voice steady and low. 3 years ago, she hit me and hid my phone. She thought silence was power. I slung the bag over my shoulder and walked toward the door. My hand hovered over the light switch. She forgot one thing, I whispered. My best friend had already called Grandma. I flipped the switch. The apartment went dark. As I walked out into the crisp Denver night, the cold air hitting my face, my mind did not go forward to the restaurant. It went back. It traveled back through the years, past the law degree, past the therapy, past the lonely nights in this apartment. It went back to a time before the violence, before the locks, before Valerie turned our home into a prison. To understand why tonight is going to be so satisfying, you have to understand what we lost. You have to see the house before the rot set in. You have to meet the girl I was before I was forced to become the woman I am now. It started in Fort Collins. It started with a lonely father and a daughter trying to hold him together. It started quiet. And maybe that was the problem. We were so quiet. We never heard the predator approaching until she was already inside the door, before the shouting started, before the locks were installed on the pantry doors, and before I learned to memorize the sound of a car pulling into the driveway with a heart rate of 150 beats per minute. There was just the silence. We lived in Fort Collins then, a college town that felt sleepy and safe, nestled right against the foothills of the Rockies. Our house was a 2-story craftsman that had seen better days. It was not a house of horrors, not yet. It was a house of exhaustion. After my mother died, the color seemed to drain out of the walls along with her. We were left in a sepia-toned existence of takeout containers, unwashed laundry, and a grief so heavy it felt like walking through waist-deep water just to get from the living room to the kitchen. My father was a good man then, or at least, I told myself he was. He was not cruel. He did not drink until he blacked out. He did not raise his hand. He just unplugged. He became a ghost in his own life, drifting from the bedroom to his job at the insurance firm and back again, leaving a trail of half-finished tasks in his wake. I was 16 years old, and by default, I became the captain of a sinking ship. The kitchen counter was always a landscape of clutter. There were grocery bags that sat unpacked for 2 days until the milk went warm and spoiled. There were stacks of mail that nobody opened, bills with red warnings that I would hide in a drawer so Dad would not panic. I learned how to cook spaghetti 3 different ways because it was the only thing he would eat without sighing. I learned how to reset the router when the Wi-Fi blinked out because he would just stare at the blinking orange light with a look of utter defeat, as if a disconnected internet connection was the final straw that would break him. I remember one Tuesday evening vividly. I was folding his laundry on the sofa, separating his dark socks from his work shirts. The television was on, playing some mindless sitcom, but neither of us was laughing. He looked up from his tablet, his eyes rimmed with red, and watched me match a pair of socks. "You are so strong," Maddie, he said. His voice was soft, thick with a mixture of pride and relief. You really are. You stepped up. You do not need anyone to take care of you. Do you? I stopped folding. I looked at him, holding a gray wool sock in my hand. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the sock at him and say that I was 16, that I needed help with my chemistry homework, that I needed someone to ask me if I had eaten lunch, that I needed a parent. But I did not say any of that. I just smiled, a tight, practiced smile that didn't reach my eyes. No, Dad, I said. I am fine. I got this. That sentence was the foundation upon which our entire disaster was built. I got this. By convincing him that I did not need parenting, I gave him permission to stop being a father. I gave him permission to look for someone else to take care of him, since he did not have to take care of me. Our holidays were exercises in minimalism. Thanksgiving was a frozen pumpkin pie and a turkey breast I roasted in the oven until it was slightly too dry. Christmas was even bleaker. We had a box of tangled lights that we never bothered to untangle. We would just drape the knot over the railing of the stairs and plug it in. One year, half the strand was burnt out, and we just stood there looking at it, eating delivery pizza. It is kind of edgy, Dad had joked, gesturing to the dark half of the string. It represents the duality of man. We laughed, but it was a hollow sound. It was lonely. God, it was so lonely. But it wasn't malicious. There was no enemy in the house, only a void where a family used to be. At school, I disappeared. I was the girl in the back of the class who always had her homework done but never raised her hand. I wore oversized hoodies to hide the fact that I was getting too thin because I often forgot to buy groceries for myself after buying them for the house. While other kids were listening to pop music or gossiping about who was dating who, I had my earbuds in, listening to legal podcasts. I was obsessed with them. Serial, Court Junkie, The Daily. I listened to hours of breakdown on civil litigation and criminal defense. I did not know why at the time. I thought I just found it interesting. Looking back, I think I was craving rules. My life at home felt formless and chaotic, governed only by the unpredictable tides of my father's depression. The law was different. The law had structure, cause and effect, evidence and verdict. If you followed the rules, you were safe. If you broke them, there was a consequence. It was a fantasy of order that I desperately needed. I had exactly one tether to the real world, and her name was Ava. Ava was everything I was not. She was loud. She had messy curly hair that she refused to tame, and she had a terrifyingly low tolerance for nonsense. She was the only person who looked at my "I am fine" act and rolled her eyes. I remember sitting in the cafeteria one afternoon, picking at a dry sandwich. Ava slammed her tray down across from me. "You look like trash," she announced. "Thank you," I said, not looking up. "You are a delight as always." "I am serious, Maddie," she said, pointing a carrot stick at me. "You have bags under your eyes big enough to carry groceries. Did you do your dad's taxes again last night?" "Someone has to do them," I muttered. "He is 45, not 4, Ava snapped, but then her face softened. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You are going to burn out. You know, you cannot hold up the sky forever." "I am not holding up the sky," I lied. "Yeah, you are," she said. "And when you drop it, I am going to be the one who has to drag you out of the rubble. Just remember that." She was my reality check. She was the only one who saw that my independence was actually abandonment. Then there was Grandma May. She lived down in New Mexico, in a small adobe house filled with the smell of sage and old paper. She could not travel often because of her arthritis. But when she did come up to Fort Collins, it was the only time I felt like a child again. She would arrive with a suitcase that smelled like lavender and a purse full of hard candies. She would take one look at the messy kitchen, purse her lips, and within an hour, the sink would be empty and something would be simmering on the stove. But it was not the cleaning that mattered. It was the way she looked at me. She would pull me into a hug, her grip surprisingly strong for a woman with trembling hands. She would hold me there for a long time, until my breathing synchronized with hers. "You are doing too much, child," she would whisper into my hair. "You are carrying a load that is not yours to carry." "I am okay, Grandma," I would say, the automatic response. She would pull back and cup my face in her hands, her thumbs tracing the shadows under my eyes. "You are worthy of care. Madison, you are not just a worker bee. You deserve to be loved, not just useful." She would always slip money into my hand before she left, a $20 bill or a 50, crumpled up and hidden inside a Kleenex so my dad would not see. "Buy something frivolous," she would command. "Do not spend this on electric bills. Buy a lipstick, buy a book, buy something that makes you smile." I never did. I saved every dollar in a shoebox under my bed. I did not know what I was saving for, but I knew that in a house this fragile, you always needed a backup plan. As the months turned into a year, the air in the house began to shift. The heavy, silent grief started to morph into something else. Anxiety. Dad started talking about money constantly. He would pace the living room floor, wearing a path into the cheap carpet. "The market is unstable," he would mutter. "I am worried about retirement. I am worried about the equity in this house. What if something happens to me? What if I get sick? Who is going to look after everything?" I heard the fear in his voice, but I did not understand what it really meant. I thought he was just venting. I thought he was looking for reassurance, so I gave it to him. "We are fine, Dad," I would say from the kitchen table where I was doing homework. "We have savings. The house is paid off mostly. We are okay." But he was not looking for financial reassurance. He was looking for a savior. He was looking for a way out of the loneliness that was eating him alive. Then came the day I walked past his bedroom and saw him standing in front of the full-length mirror. He was wearing a new shirt, a crisp blue button-down that still had the creases from the packaging. He was spraying cologne, a heavy, musky scent that smelled nothing like him. It smelled aggressive. It smelled like desperation. He saw me in the reflection and jumped, looking guilty. "What do you think?" he asked, turning around and smoothing the front of the shirt. He smiled, but it was a jagged, nervous thing. "Too much?" "You look nice, Dad," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "Where are you going?" "Just out," he said, avoiding my eyes. "Dinner with a friend." He picked up his phone, and I saw the flash of a dating app on the screen. My stomach dropped. It was a mix of profound sadness for him and a selfish, twisting fear for myself. He looked so hopeful and so terrified at the same time. He looked like a teenager going to prom, not a grown man. "That is great, Dad," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. He walked over to me and put his hands on my shoulders. He looked me dead in the eye, and the vulnerability in his face hardened into something brittle. "It is time, Maddie," he said. "I cannot do this alone anymore. I need a partner, and it will be good for you, too, to have a woman in the house again, to have a mother figure." I flinched internally at the words, mother figure. I did not want a mother figure. I had a mother, and she was gone. I was 18 by then. I was practically raising myself. I did not need a mother. "Sure," I said. "You will like whoever I choose," he said. It was not a question. It was not a request. It was a statement of fact. "You have to, Maddie. For me, I need this to work. So you will make it work, right?" There it was. The command. He was telling me that his happiness was now dependent on my compliance. If he found someone, I was not allowed to have an opinion. I was not allowed to see flaws. I was only allowed to facilitate his rescue. "Of course, Dad," I said. "I just want you to be happy." He hugged me then, enveloping me in that cloud of cheap cologne. "You are a good daughter," he mumbled. "The best." I stood there in his arms, feeling the knot in my stomach tighten. I looked over his shoulder at the messy room, the dust motes dancing in the afternoon light, the pile of unpaid bills on his dresser. I thought our house was already broken. I thought the silence and the grief were the worst things that could happen to us. I looked at the empty space beside him and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty windows. I did not know that a person was coming who would look at our grief and see an opportunity. I did not know that she would look at the cracks in our foundation, my father's desperation, my desire to please, our financial anxiety, and she would not try to fix them. She would stick her fingers into those cracks and pull, until the whole thing came crashing down on top of me. I thought I was just agreeing to let him date. I did not know I was opening the door to the enemy. Valerie entered our lives not like a girlfriend, but like a project manager arriving at a construction site that was falling behind schedule. She was a real estate agent based in Denver, and she wore her profession like a second skin. Her hair was a helmet of perfectly highlighted blonde waves that never moved, even in the wind. Her nails were manicured into sharp, nude-colored points that clicked against everything she touched. I remember the first time she stepped into our hallway in Fort Collins. It was a Tuesday. Just 3 months after Dad had started his dating phase. I was wearing an oversized university sweatshirt and leggings, holding a basket of laundry. Valerie was wearing a structured cream blazer and heels that cost more than my first car. She did not look at me first. She looked at the crown molding. She looked at the scuff marks on the floorboards. She looked at the stack of mail on the entry table. "Oh, Robert," she cooed, turning to my father with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "It is just so cozy. It has so much potential, does it not? With a little bit of vision, you could really open this space up." It was a masterclass in the backhanded compliment. She had called our home small and dark without using either of those words. My father, who usually walked with a slump in his shoulders, suddenly straightened his spine. He laughed, a nervous, eager sound that I had never heard before. "I told you, Val, it needs a woman's touch. We have been roughing it here." Roughing it. That is what he called the last 2 years of me keeping him alive. Valerie finally turned to me. She scanned me from my messy bun to my fuzzy socks. "And this must be Madison. Your dad talks about you all the time." She stepped forward and hugged me. She smelled of expensive vanilla and sandalwood, a heavy, cloying scent that instantly overpowered the smell of the laundry detergent I had used. Her body felt rigid against mine. It was like hugging a mannequin. "Nice to meet you," I said, pulling back. "You have such a pretty face," she said, tilting her head. "You would really shine if you chose styles that were a little softer. You know, less." She gestured vaguely at my sweatshirt. "Social worker of the future, but we can work on that." Dad laughed again. "She is right. Maddie, you could dress up a bit more." I felt a flash of heat in my chest, but I swallowed it. I forced a smile. "I will keep that in mind." Over the next few weeks, Valerie did not just visit. She invaded. It started with the candles. She brought over these massive, 3-wick candles that smelled like aggressive floral arrangements and placed them in every room. She said she wanted to freshen the energy, but what she really did was erase the smell of our home. She erased the smell of the old wood, the lingering scent of my dad's coffee, the smell of us. Then came the kitchen. I came home from class one afternoon to find the contents of the pantry on the kitchen table. My system, the system I had built to keep track of what we had and what we needed so we would not waste money, was dismantled. Valerie was standing there, humming, putting spices into matching glass jars she had brought. "What are you doing?" I asked, dropping my backpack. "Oh, hi, sweetie," she said, not looking up. "I was just organizing. I could not find anything in here. It was a bit of a disaster zone, right? I am putting everything in clear containers so we can see what we have. It is much more efficient." I knew where everything was, I said, my voice tight. "Well, now everyone knows where everything is," she countered, flashing that perfect, empty smile. "It is just better this way. Don't you think it looks cleaner?" My dad walked in then, looking tired from work, but lighting up when he saw her. "Wow, Val, place looks like a magazine. See, Maddie? I told you she was a miracle worker." I looked at my dad, begging him with my eyes to see that she was erasing me. I was the one who cooked his dinner every night. I was the one who knew he liked the garlic powder next to the salt, but he did not see me. He only saw the shiny glass jars and the woman who promised to fix his life. "Yeah," I said quietly. A miracle. Then came Savannah. Savannah was Valerie's daughter, a year younger than me, but light years ahead in social standing. If I was the background extra, Savannah was the lead actress. She was petite, blonde, and possessed the kind of bubbly, infectious personality that works on adults like a magic spell. When Valerie introduced us, the dynamic shifted instantly. Dad stood with his arm around Valerie, and Valerie stood with her arm around Savannah. I stood on the other side of the kitchen island, alone. "This is my baby, Savannah," Valerie said, beaming. "She is captain of the cheer squad at her school in Denver, and this," she gestured to me with a casual flick of her wrist, "this is Madison. She is very independent." Independent. It sounded like a compliment. It sounded like she was praising my strength, but I heard the subtext. Savannah was my baby. Savannah needed protection, love, and attention. Madison was independent. Madison did not need anything. Madison could be ignored. The difference in our status became tangible the week Savannah got her license. My dad called a family meeting. We sat around the dining table, which Valerie had covered with a new runner that I was not allowed to put coffee cups on. "Valerie and I have been talking," Dad started, looking at Savannah with a benevolent smile. "Since Savannah is going to be driving to school, we worry about safety. The roads to Denver can be tricky in the winter." He slid a set of keys across the table. Savannah squealed, "No way!" "It is a used Honda CR-V," Dad said proudly. "All-wheel drive, 5-star safety rating. We want to make sure you are safe, sweetheart." I stared at the keys. I was driving the family's 12-year-old sedan. The heat only worked on the high setting. The passenger door stuck in the winter, and the check engine light had been on since the Bush administration. "Dad," I said, "my car stalled at a red light 3 times last week." Valerie chimed in, her voice smooth as silk. "We know, Madison, but you are such a good driver. You have so much experience. Savannah is just learning. She needs the extra safety features. We knew you would understand. You are always so practical." There it was again. Practical. Independent. The words they used to justify giving me less. "Right," I said. "Practical." Savannah hugged my dad, calling him Robert with a cutesy lisp that made my skin crawl. "Thank you, Robert. You are the best." He beamed. He looked like he had just won the lottery. He was buying a new family, and the cost of admission was my dignity. Things accelerated after that. Valerie started talking about marriage, but not in a romantic way. It was transactional. "Interest rates are shifting," she told my dad over dinner, ignoring me completely. "If we want to buy a bigger place, something that actually fits our lifestyle, we need to combine our assets. We need to look stable for the lenders. We should do it before the quarter ends." My dad nodded, entranced. "Whatever you think is best, Val. You know the market." "I do," she said, slicing her steak with precision. "We need to sell this place. It is too small. The girls need their own space." I perked up. "I have my own space here." "A bigger space," Valerie corrected. "We found a lovely build in Aurora. 4 bedrooms, high ceilings." They got married at the courthouse 2 weeks later. No reception. Just a dinner where Valerie spent the whole time on her phone with mortgage brokers. We moved a month after that. The new house in Aurora was one of those cookie-cutter McMansions that look impressive from the street but feel hollow inside. It was beige. Everything was beige. When we got there, Valerie stood in the foyer, directing the movers. "Savannah, honey, take the second room on the left upstairs," Valerie said. "The one with the bay window. You need that southern exposure for your seasonal depression, remember? The light is so important for her mental health." She added to my dad. "Of course," Dad said. "What about Maddie?" Valerie hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. "Well, there are the other bedrooms, but I was thinking of turning one into an office for me, and the other one for a guest room for when your mother visits. We don't want May sleeping on a couch, do we?" "No," Dad said. "So—" "The finished attic," Valerie said, brighty. "It is huge. It is practically a studio apartment. It is so private. Madison will love it. It is perfect for someone so independent. I walked up to the attic. It was not huge. It was a finished crawl space with slanted ceilings that meant I could only stand up fully in the very center of the room. It had one small window that looked out onto the gutter. The carpet was a rough industrial gray loop. "It just needs a little paint," Valerie called up from the stairs. "There is some leftover paint in the garage you can use." I went to the garage. The leftover paint was a muddy taupe color that had separated. I spent 3 days painting my own prison cell, while Savannah hired a decorator to do a boho chic theme in her room with the bay window. Once we were settled, the real regime began. Valerie sat Dad down and showed him a spreadsheet. "If we want to maintain this lifestyle, Robert, we need to be aggressive with the mortgage payments. I can handle the domestic side. I will manage the house, the bills, the girls. You just focus on work. Maybe pick up those overtime shifts you mentioned." "You would do that?" Dad asked, looking relieved. "You would handle all the bills?" "Everything," she promised. "I want you to relax when you come home." It was a coup, a bloodless, silent coup. By taking over the domestic side, she took control of every piece of information flowing in and out of the house. She took the mail key. She changed the passwords on the utility accounts. I tried to object. "Dad, you used to like seeing where the money went. I can help you with the budget like I used to." "Madison, please," Valerie cut in, her voice dropping an octave. "The adults are talking. You do not understand the complexity of these finances. Let your father rest. He works so hard for you." "For you," as if his exhaustion was my fault. One afternoon, I came home early from my classes at the community college. I walked into the hallway and stopped. There was a man kneeling in front of the hallway closet, the deep walk-in closet where we kept the winter coats, the vacuum, and the fireproof box with our birth certificates, Social Security cards, and my mother's jewelry. "What is going on?" I asked. Valerie stepped out of the kitchen. She was holding a glass of iced tea. "Oh, just upgrading the hardware," she said casually. The locksmith stood up. "All done, ma'am. Deadbolt installed. Here are the keys." He handed 2 shiny brass keys to Valerie. "Why are you putting a deadbolt on the coat closet?" I asked, a cold feeling spreading through my stomach. "Security," Valerie said, dropping the keys into her pocket. "We have sensitive documents in there, the safe, passports. We cannot just have people rummaging around." "People?" I asked. "It is just us living here." She smiled, and for the first time, the mask slipped completely. It was not the sweet smile she gave my father. It was a predator's grin. It was the smile of someone who had just closed the gate on a trap. "Exactly," she said. "It is just us." She walked over to the closet, closed the door, and turned the lock. Click. It was a heavy final sound. "Dad might need to get in there," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I will keep the key for safekeeping," she said. "He tends to lose things. It is better if one person is in charge. Less confusion." She patted my cheek as she walked past me. "Don't worry your pretty little head about it. Independent girl. I have got everything under control." I watched her walk away, the keys jingling in her pocket. I looked at the new brass lock on the white door. It stared back at me like an unblinking eye. I thought she was just being controlling. I thought she was just a type A personality who liked order. I did not know that the closet was not just a closet anymore. It was the vault where she would eventually hide the evidence of her crimes. And I did not know that the lock was not there to keep thieves out. It was there to keep the truth in. The transition from the honeymoon phase to the prison phase did not happen overnight. It was a slow, suffocating constriction, like a python tightening its coils 1 inch at a time. At first, you think it is just a hug. By the time you realize you cannot breathe, your ribs are already cracking. The shift began with the timekeeping. Valerie started tracking my movements with an intensity that she disguised as maternal affection. If I told her I was going to Ava's house and would be back by 9, she would be standing in the foyer at 8:59, tapping her watch face. If I walked in at 9:02, the interrogation would begin. "Where were you?" she would ask, her voice tight and high. "I was just driving home," I would say. "I hit a red light on Colfax." It was a brilliant strategy. She weaponized her own anxiety. If I was late, I was not just irresponsible, I was actively hurting her. Then came the phone rule. It was a Tuesday night. Dad was already asleep, exhausted from another 12-hour shift that Valerie had encouraged him to take. I was in the kitchen getting a glass of water when Valerie placed a small wicker basket on the granite island. "New house rule," she announced brightly. "We need to prioritize family connection and sleep hygiene. From now on, all phones go in the basket at 10 in the evening." I looked at the basket. "I am 20 years old," I said. "I use my phone as my alarm clock." "I bought you a digital alarm clock," she said, pointing to a box on the counter. "It is better for your brain waves. Phones down, 10 o'clock. "Does Savannah have to put her phone in the basket?" I asked. Valerie laughed, a dismissive, tinkling sound. "Savannah is 16, sweetheart. She has homework groups, cheer practice coordination. Besides, Savannah is an open book. She does not hide things in her room like some people. This is for your own good. Madison, you spend too much time staring at that screen. It makes you sullen." So, every night at 10, I had to walk downstairs and deposit my lifeline into the wicker basket. I would lie awake in my attic room, listening to the faint buzz of Savannah's phone vibrating through the floorboards below me as she texted her friends until midnight. The injustice burned in my throat like acid, but if I complained, I was being petty or jealous of a teenager. My world began to shrink. I had planned to transfer to Metro State University in Denver to finish my degree. I had the grades, I had the acceptance letter, but when the time came to pay the deposit, Valerie sat me down with a calculator and a grim expression. "We just cannot make the numbers work. Maddie," she sighed, pushing a piece of paper toward me. "With the new mortgage and the repairs the house needs, Metro State is just too selfish of an ask right now." "It is a state school," I argued. "I can get student loans." "And put that debt on your father's conscience?" she asked, her eyes widening. "He is already working himself to death. If you take out loans, it affects our credit utilization as a household. No, community college is fine. It is cheaper. Plus, if you are close to home, you can help out more. God knows I need the help with this big house." So I stayed. I went to the local community college. I came straight home. I cleaned. I cooked. I put my phone in the basket at 10. But even when I had my phone, it did not feel like mine anymore. I started noticing that my battery was draining at an alarming rate. I would charge it to 100% in the morning, and by noon, it would be in the red. Even if I hadn't used it, the phone felt hot to the touch. I took it to a repair kiosk at the mall one afternoon. The guy behind the counter, a teenager with green hair, plugged it into his laptop. He frowned. "You have got a ton of background data running," he said. "Do you have a parental control app installed?" "No," I said. "I am an adult." He turned the screen around. "Well, someone installed SafeKeep on here. It tracks GPS, logs text messages, and records call history. It is eating your battery alive because it is constantly uploading data to the cloud." My blood ran cold. I went home and confronted her. I did not wait for Dad. I walked into the kitchen where she was chopping vegetables and held up the phone. "You put a tracker on my phone?" I asked, my voice shaking. She did not even stop chopping. "It is a family safety app, Madison. Don't be dramatic." "You are reading my texts?" "I am ensuring you are not getting involved with the wrong crowd," she said calmly. "You are so naive, Madison. You do not know how the world works. I am protecting you." "I am taking it off," I said. She slammed the knife down on the cutting board. The sound cracked through the kitchen like a gunshot. "If you take that app off," she said, turning to face me, her face twisting into a snarl, "then you do not get a phone. Who pays the bill? Madison, your father. That means it is his phone. And since I manage the accounts, it is my phone, my rules. That night, when Dad came home, I tried to tell him. I tried to explain that this was a violation of my privacy, that it was insane behavior. Before I could get 3 sentences out, Valerie burst into tears. "I just worry about her so much. Robert," she sobbed, burying her face in his shoulder. "She is out all hours. She is so secretive. I just wanted to know she was safe. And she yelled at me. She looked at me like I was a monster." Dad looked at me over her heaving shoulder. His eyes were dull, rimmed with dark circles. He looked 10 years older than he had 6 months ago. "Maddie," he said, his voice heavy with exhaustion, "please, Valerie is sensitive. She is just trying to be a good mother to you. Why do you have to make everything a fight?" "She is stalking me, Dad," I said. "She is caring for you," he corrected. "Just keep the app, okay? For my peace of mind? I cannot deal with the fighting. I just need some peace." Peace. That was the currency Valerie traded in. She held the peace of the house hostage. If I submitted, there was peace. If I resisted, there was chaos. And my father was too tired to survive the chaos. So he begged me for the submission. The isolation deepened. Grandma May called less and less, or rather, I spoke to her less and less. When the landline rang, Valerie would snatch it up. "Oh, May," she would chirp. "I would love to put Madison on, but she is studying right now. She is so focused. I do not want to break her flow. I will tell her you called." She never told me. When Grandma finally called my cell phone, Valerie would magically appear in the doorway of whatever room I was in. She would stand there, leaning against the frame, folding laundry or just watching, making it impossible for me to say anything real. "Everything is great, Grandma," I would say, my eyes locked on Valerie's unblinking stare. "School is good. Everyone is happy." The first time she touched me in anger, it was not a slap. It was quieter than that. It was a Thursday evening in November. Ava's 22nd birthday party was that night. I had told Valerie a week in advance. I had put it on the family calendar. I came downstairs at 6, dressed in jeans and a nice top, keys in hand. Valerie was in the hallway, blocking the front door. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Ava's birthday," I said. "I told you." "Oh," she said, picking at a piece of lint on her sweater. "I forgot. We are having a family game night tonight. Savannah made nachos." "I cannot stay," I said. "I promised Ava. It is her birthday." "Family comes first, Madison," Valerie said, her voice hardening. "Savannah will be crushed if you leave. She looks up to you." "I am going," I said. I stepped forward, reaching for the doorknob. Valerie's hand shot out. Her fingers clamped around my wrist. It was not a gentle hold. It was a vice grip. Her nails, sharp and manicured, dug into the soft skin of my inner wrist. I gasped, more from the shock than the pain, though it did hurt. She pulled me toward her, invading my personal space until I could smell the wine on her breath. "You are selfish," she hissed. "You are a selfish, ungrateful little brat. We put a roof over your head. We feed you, and you cannot spare one evening for your sister?" I looked down at her hand on my wrist. Her knuckles were white. The skin around her fingers was turning red. "Let go of me," I said. My voice was quiet, trembling. She squeezed harder, twisting my skin just enough to burn. Then, as quickly as she had grabbed me, she let go. She shoved my arm away as if touching me disgusted her. "Go," she spat. "Go get drunk with your trashy friend. Do not expect us to wait up." I left. I got in my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely put the key in the ignition. I drove 2 blocks and pulled over under a street lamp. I turned on the dome light and looked at my wrist. There were 4 distinct crescent moon shapes where her nails had dug in, and a blooming purplish bruise where her thumb had pressed against the vein. It was small. It was easy to hide with a long sleeve, but it was real. I pulled out my phone. My instinct was to cry, but something colder, something sharper, took over. I opened the camera app. I held my wrist under the light. Snap. I did not know why I took the picture. I did not think I would ever show it to anyone. It felt like proof of insanity. If I told someone, my stepmother grabbed my wrist because I wanted to go to a birthday party. It sounded petty, but the bruise? The bruise did not have a tone of voice. The bruise did not sound petty. The bruise just was. I went to the party. I tried to smile. But Ava, with her hawk eyes, saw me flinch when she grabbed my hand to drag me to the cake. "What is that?" she asked, pulling my sleeve up before I could stop her. She stared at the marks. The music in the bar seemed to fade away. "She grabbed me," I whispered. "I tried to leave. She did not want me to." Ava looked at me. Her face was not sad. It was furious. "Maddie," she said, her voice low and deadly serious. "That is not normal. You know that, right? Parents do not leave marks on their children because they want to play board games. That is battery." "It is not that bad," I said, the automatic defense springing up. She was just stressed. "Stop," Ava said. "Stop making excuses for her. Take a picture." "I already did," I said. Ava looked at me with a new kind of respect. "Good. Send it to me, right now, and send it to your email. Do not delete it." I sent it. That night, when I got home, the house was dark. The door was unlocked. I walked up to my attic room, tiptoeing on the creaky floorboards. I lay in bed, staring at the slanted ceiling. I rubbed my wrist. It throbbed in time with my heartbeat. Before that night, I thought abuse was something loud. I thought it was drunken rages, thrown bottles, police sirens, and broken bones. I thought it was what you saw in movies. I did not realize that abuse could be quiet. I did not realize it could look like a wicker basket on a kitchen counter. I did not realize it could sound like, "I am just worried about you." I did not realize it could be a schedule that accounted for every minute of your day, or a lock on a closet door. I did not realize that violence does not always start with a fist. Sometimes, it starts with a rule, and by the time the fist comes, the rules have already stripped you of the ability to fight back. I fell asleep with my phone hidden under my pillow, breaking the rule for the first time. It was a small rebellion, but it was the beginning of the war. It was the winter I turned 21, and the air in the house had become so brittle, I felt like a single loud noise would shatter the walls. I was living a double life. By day, I was a student at the community college and a part-time file clerk at a small legal firm called Beacon Row Legal Services in downtown Denver. It was not a glamorous job. I spent hours standing in front of a scanner, digitizing decades of dusty property deeds and affidavits, but to me, that office was a sanctuary. It was the only place where the rules were written down on paper, not invented on a whim by a woman with a mood disorder and a control complex. It was at Beacon Row that I first learned the vocabulary for my life. I was filing a deposition for a divorce case one afternoon when I saw the phrase coercive control. I read the definition: isolation, monitoring, financial abuse, gaslighting. I stood there in the copy room, the hum of the Xerox machine vibrating against my hip, and I felt tears prick my eyes. I was not crazy. I was a case study. That same week, the Lifeline appeared. I opened my personal email, which I only checked at work because Valerie monitored the home Wi-Fi, and saw the notification. I had been approved for a transfer scholarship to finish my paralegal program at a university in the city center. It included a small stipend for housing. It was not enough to live like a queen, but it was enough to rent a room in a shared house. It was enough to leave. I felt a surge of hope so violent it almost made me dizzy. At the same time, Grandma May seemed to sense the shift in the atmosphere. She started texting me more often, bypassing the landline entirely. Her messages were short but heavy. "I am worried about you. Maddie, I am coming up to visit next week. I do not care what Valerie says." On a Tuesday evening, the sun had already set by 5 o'clock, plunging the house into a premature gloom. I was up in my attic room, huddled under a blanket. I had my phone. It was 6:15. which meant I had 3 hours and 45 minutes before the 10 o'clock confiscation rule kicked in. I FaceTimed Ava. When her face popped up on the screen, she was in her pajamas, eating cereal. "Hey," she said, mid-chew. "You look like you are hiding in a bunker." "I feel like I am," I whispered. I pulled the blanket tighter. "Listen, I got the scholarship. I am going to take it. I am going to move out next month." Ava stopped chewing. "Oh my God, Maddie, that is amazing. Does she know?" "No," I said. "If she knows, she will find a way to sabotage it. She will tell Dad I am abandoning the family or that I stole money. I have to do it quietly." I shifted the phone, and the sleeve of my sweater slid down my arm. Ava's eyes narrowed. "Stop. Move your arm back." "It is nothing," I said, trying to pull the sleeve down. "Madison," Ava said, her voice dropping that scary octave. "Show me." I hesitated, then pulled up the fabric. On my forearm, just below the elbow, was a fresh, ugly bruise. It was blooming yellow and purple, the shape of 4 fingers digging into soft flesh. It had happened 2 days ago when I tried to close the bathroom door and Valerie had shoved it open to check on me, slamming the wood into my arm. "I ran into the door," I said automatically. "Do not lie to me," Ava said. She tapped her screen. "I just took a screenshot. That is not a door. That is a grip mark." "It was an accident," I pleaded, though I knew it wasn't. "Send me your grandmother's number," Ava said. "Right now." "Why?" "Because if I call you and you do not pick up, I need to call someone who can actually get inside that house," Ava said. "I am not playing games anymore. Maddie, this is escalating." I sent her the number. I did not know it then, but that single data transfer saved my life. I hung up with Ava and saw a text from Grandma May. "Call me when you can speak freely." I looked at the door of my attic room. It was closed. I could hear the television downstairs. Some reality show where women screamed at each other over dinner tables. Valerie was occupied. Dad was working late again. I dialed Grandma. "Hi, Grandma," I whispered. "Maddie," her voice was sharp, clear. "I booked a ticket. I will be there on Friday. I want you to pack a bag before I get there." "I can't just leave," I said, my heart hammering. "She will destroy Dad. She has control of all the accounts. If I leave, she takes it out on him." "Your father is a grown man," Grandma said. "You are the child. You need to get out. Things are not right there. I can feel it." "I know," I said, tears leaking from my eyes. "I know. Grandma, it is getting worse. She watches me. She tracks me. I think she knows I'm planning something." I did not hear the footsteps on the stairs. The carpet Valerie had installed was thick, plush, and silent. The door to my room flew open. I gasped, dropping the phone to the mattress. Valerie stood there. She was not screaming. She was terrifyingly calm. Her face was a mask of cold, hard rage. She was wearing her silk robe, holding a glass of red wine in one hand. "Who are you talking to?" she asked. "No one," I stammered, reaching for the phone. "Just a podcast." She crossed the room in 2 strides. She snatched the phone from the bed before my fingers could graze it. She looked at the screen. The call was still connected. "May," Valerie said into the phone, her voice dripping with venom. "I might have known." She ended the call. She did not hand the phone back. "You are poisoning her against me," Valerie said. It was not a question. "I give you a home. I give you structure. I take care of your father who is too weak to function. And this is how you repay me? By whispering lies to an old woman?" "I was not lying," I said. Standing up, I was shaking, but the adrenaline was starting to pump. "Give me my phone back. Valerie, I am an adult. You cannot take my property." "Property?" She laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "You have nothing. Everything you have is because I allow it. That scholarship you think you are hiding? I saw the email notification on the shared iPad. You think you are leaving?" "Yes," I said. "I am." "You are going nowhere," she hissed. She stepped forward. The small room felt suddenly like a coffin. "Give it to me," I said, reaching for the phone in her hand. She shoved me. It was not a playful shove. It was a violent, two-handed push against my chest. I stumbled backward, my feet tangling in the rug, and my shoulder slammed hard against the sloping wall. The impact knocked the wind out of me. "You ungrateful little parasite," she spat. I tried to push past her to get to the door. "I am telling Dad. I am telling everyone." She caught my arm, the same arm with the bruise, and twisted it behind my back. Pain shot up to my shoulder, white and hot. She spun me around and slammed me face first into the wall. Then she hit me. She let go of my arm and swung her open hand. It connected with the side of my face with a sickening crack. My head snapped to the side. My ear instantly started ringing, a high-pitched whine that drowned out the sound of my own gasp. My cheek felt like it had been touched by a hot iron. I slid down the wall, stunned. I was on the floor, looking up at her. She loomed over me, panting slightly. She looked at her hand, then at me. There was no regret in her eyes, only satisfaction. "You are not telling lies to anyone," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "If you say one word to your father, I will tell him you attacked me. I will tell him you are having a breakdown. I will have you committed. Madison, do not test me." She turned and walked out the door, taking my phone with her. "No!" I screamed. I scrambled up and chased her. I ran down the stairs, my socks slipping on the wood. "Give it back! You cannot do this!" She reached the bottom of the stairs and walked straight to the hallway closet. She pulled the key from her robe pocket. She unlocked the door. I watched from the landing as she threw my phone onto the shelf inside, right next to the stack of cash she kept hidden. She slammed the heavy door. She turned the key. Click. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. She turned to me. "Go to the guest room, now." "I am leaving," I sobbed, clutching my burning face. "I am walking out the front door." "If you walk out that door," she said calmly, "I will call the police and tell them you stole my jewelry. I will ruin your record. You will never be a paralegal. You will never get that scholarship. I will destroy your future before it even starts." I froze. I knew she would do it. She knew the system better than I did. She knew how to play the victim. "In the room," she pointed. I walked into the small den off the kitchen. It was a windowless room we used for storage. She closed the door. I heard the lock turn from the outside. It was a simple privacy lock, but she had modified it. I was trapped. "Let me out!" I pounded on the door with my fists. "Valerie, this is false imprisonment. This is illegal." "Calm down, Madison," she yelled through the wood, loud enough for a neighbor to potentially hear the performance. "You are having an episode, just breathe. We can talk when you stop screaming." She was staging it. She was setting the scene for Dad. Madison lost it. Madison had to be contained. I sank to the floor. I touched my cheek. It was throbbing, hot and swollen. My ear was still ringing. I was alone. My phone was in a safe. My dad would come home and believe her. I was 21 years old, and I had been erased. I pulled my knees to my chest and buried my face in my arms. No one is coming. I thought, no one knows. But I was wrong. 300 miles away in New Mexico. Grandma May was staring at her phone. The call had cut off abruptly. She had heard the scuffle. She had heard Valerie's voice. She called me back, straight to voicemail. She called again, voicemail. She dialed another number. In her apartment in Denver. Ava picked up on the first ring. "She is not answering," Grandma May said, her voice shaking but steely. "I heard Valerie. She was screaming. Then the line went dead." Ava was already moving. I know this because she told me later. She was pulling on her boots, grabbing her keys. "I have the screenshot." "May," Ava said, "I have the picture of the bruise from 2 days ago, and I have the timestamp of when she went offline." "I am calling the police," Grandma May said. "I am calling the station in Aurora. I am giving them the address. I am telling them my granddaughter is being held against her will." "Do it," Ava said. running out to her car. Tell them to hurry, because if Valerie finds out what Maddie knows, she is not just going to lock her up, she is going to hurt her. Grandma May hung up and dialed 911. Emergency services, the dispatcher answered. My name is May Whitaker, Grandma said, her voice clear and commanding. I need you to send an officer to 4200 Crestview Drive in Aurora immediately. My granddaughter is in that house with a woman who has assaulted her, and she has stopped communicating. I believe she is in immediate danger. Back in the dark room, I curled into a ball on the carpet. I heard footsteps upstairs. Valerie walking around. Then, the sound of the television in the living room blasting. The volume went up, and up, and up, until the bass shook the floorboards, drowning out my sobs. She thought she had buried me. She thought the noise would cover the crime. She did not know that the sirens were already in the distance, cutting through the winter night, coming for her. I was sitting on the floor of the guest room, knees pulled to my chest, tracing the pattern of the rug with a trembling finger. The television in the living room was still blaring, a wall of artificial noise designed to bury me. When I heard the car engine cut outside, I didn't move. In movies, the victim always knows when help arrives. They perk up. They run to the window. In reality, when you have been conditioned to believe that you are crazy and that nobody is coming, the sound of a car just sounds like another delivery truck, or maybe a neighbor pulling into their driveway. It did not sound like rescue. It sounded like the world going on without me. Then came the knock. It was not a polite tap. It was a heavy, authoritative pounding that rattled the front door in its frame. The volume on the television abruptly cut out. The silence that followed was deafening. I heard Valerie's footsteps, quick, annoyed clicks of her heels on the hardwood, moving toward the foyer. I held my breath, pressing my ear against the cold wood of the locked door. I heard the front door open. Good evening, officers. Valerie's voice floated down the hallway. It was her best voice. It was the voice she used when she was trying to close a deal on $1 million property. It was warm, confused, and perfectly non-threatening. Is there a problem? Did a neighbor complain about the TV? My stepdaughter. Well, she is having a bit of a rough night, so I turned it up to drown out the noise. Ma'am, we received a call requesting a welfare check on a Madison Whitaker, a deep male voice said. Oh, for heaven's sake, Valerie sighed, a sound of pure exasperation. Did she call you? I am so sorry. She is having a mental health episode. She gets very agitated, and she tends to make things up for attention. I have her resting in the guest room right now so she does not hurt herself. We need to see her, ma'am. I really do not think that is a good idea. Valerie lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. She is hysterical. If you go in there, it will just trigger another outburst. I am handling it. We are a private family. Then, a third voice cut through the air, a voice that made my heart stop, then restart with a violent thud. She is not hysterical, Valerie, and she is not staying in this house 1 minute longer. It was Grandma May. I scrambled to my knees. Grandma! I screamed. I slammed my shoulder against the door. Grandma, I am in here! She locked me in! Maddie! Grandma's voice was closer now, right in the entryway. I hear her. She is screaming. Officer, Valerie's voice turned sharp. This woman is trespassing. She is the grandmother, yes, but she has no legal right to be here. She is the one inciting this behavior. I want her removed. Open the door, ma'am, the officer said. His tone had shifted. It was no longer polite. It was a command. I told you she is unsafe, Valerie argued. If you do not open this door, we will kick it down, the officer said, and then we will arrest you for obstruction. Open it, now. I heard the jingle of keys, but not the guest room key. Wait, Grandma May said. Officer, ask her to open the hallway closet first. Why? Valerie snapped. This is ridiculous. Because that is where the evidence is, Grandma said. My granddaughter's friend told me. She locks the phone in the safe. Open the closet. There was a pause, a thick, heavy silence. Ma'am, the officer said to Valerie. Open the closet. I do not have the key on me, Valerie stammered. I think Robert has it. It is in your pocket, I yelled through the door. It is in her robe pocket. I saw her put it there. Open it, the officer barked. I heard the click of the closet lock, then the squeak of the hinges. The safe, the officer said. Open it. It is just personal documents, Valerie said, her voice trembling with rage. This is an invasion of privacy. I am calling my lawyer. You can call your lawyer after we verify that you are not holding a 21-year-old woman's property against her will, the officer said. Open the safe. Beep, 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 whir. The safe door swung open. Well, the officer said, is this the phone? I could imagine Valerie's face. I could imagine the color draining out of it as she realized that her meticulously organized control center was now a crime scene. She gave it to me, Valerie lied. For safekeeping. She was throwing things. And these documents? Another officer asked. These look like bank statements. And is this a practice sheet for signatures? That is nothing, Valerie said quickly. Okay, that is enough, the first officer said. Open the guest room, now. The key turned in the lock of my prison. The handle turned. The door swung open, and light from the hallway flooded into the dark room. I was blinking against the brightness, still huddled on the floor. 2 police officers stood there, filling the frame. Behind them, Valerie stood with her arms crossed, her face a mask of stone. And pushing past them all was Grandma May. She looked smaller than I remembered, wrapped in a heavy winter coat that smelled like cold air and airport coffee, but she moved with the force of a linebacker. She dropped her purse and fell to her knees beside me. Oh my God, she whispered, her hands hovering over my face. Maddie, look at you. I knew what she was seeing. The left side of my face was throbbing. It felt hot and tight. I touched my cheek and winced. She hit me, I said. My voice was croaky, but it was steady. I looked up at the police officer. She hit me in the face. She twisted my arm, and she took my phone and locked me in here. She is lying, Valerie shouted from the doorway. She ran into the wall. She was throwing a tantrum. I want to leave, I said to the officer. I am 21. I want to leave with my grandmother. The officer looked at me, then at Valerie. He looked at the bruise blooming on my cheek. He looked at the heavy deadbolt on the outside of the guest room door, a lock that clearly had no purpose other than containment. You are free to go, miss, the officer said. He turned to Valerie. Step back, ma'am. Step away from the door. You cannot just let her take her, Valerie shrieked. She lives here. Her father isn't even home. This is kidnapping. She is an adult, the officer said coldly. And given the marks on her face and the fact that she was locked in a room from the outside, you should be very careful about what you say next. Grandma May helped me stand up. My legs were shaky, but her arm around my waist was like an iron bar. We are leaving, Grandma said. Tonight, right now, non-negotiable. My phone, I said. The officer handed me my phone. It was cold. I turned it on. Notifications flooded the screen. Texts from Ava, missed calls from Grandma, and an email from Ava. I opened it. Subject: Evidence. Attached were the screenshots of the FaceTime call from 20 minutes ago, showing my face before the slap. Attached was the photo of my bruised wrist from 2 days ago. Attached was a log of dates and times I had told Ava about the restrictions. I held the phone up to the officer. My friend sent this, I said. This is from 20 minutes ago, before she hit me, and this, I scrolled to the wrist photo, is from Tuesday. She has done this before. The officer took the phone and looked at the screen. He looked at Valerie. That is not a tantrum, he said. That is a pattern. Valerie stepped back. For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Not the fake fear she performed for my dad, but the cold, hard realization that she had lost control of the narrative. She is manipulating you, Valerie spat, but her voice lacked its usual power. She is sick. I am going to pack a bag, I said. I will come with you, Grandma May said. We walked past Valerie. I did not look at her. I walked up the stairs to the attic room. Grandma stood in the doorway, blocking it with her body, glaring at the hallway as if daring Valerie to appear. I grabbed a duffel bag. I did not pack everything. I did not care about the books or the clothes or the trinkets. I grabbed my laptop. I grabbed the folder of documents I had hidden under my mattress, the ones I had scanned at work. I grabbed my coat. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely zip the bag. It is okay, Grandma said softly. I am here. You are safe. I cannot believe you came, I whispered. I thought I was alone. Ava called me, she said. I was already at the airport in Albuquerque waiting for my flight for Friday. I changed my ticket. I landed an hour ago. I came straight here from DIA. I met the officers in the driveway. We walked back down the stairs. The house felt different now. It was no longer a prison. It was just a house full of beige furniture and ugly secrets. Valerie was standing at the bottom of the stairs. She was gripping the banister so hard her knuckles were white. She looked at me. There was no apology in her face. There was no guilt. Her eyes were narrow, calculating. She was already planning her next move. She was already composing the story she would tell my father. Maddie had a breakdown. Maddie attacked me. I had to defend myself. You are making a mistake, Valerie said, her voice low and steady. You walk out that door. You are dead to this family. You get nothing, no money, no support, nothing. I stopped on the bottom step. I looked her right in the eye. I already have nothing here, I said. Your father will never forgive you, she said. He will hate you for this. Maybe, I said, but at least he will know the truth. Let's go. Maddie, Grandma said, guiding me toward the door. The police officer opened the front door for us. The cold winter air hit my face, stinging my bruised cheek, but it felt amazing. It felt like oxygen. I walked out onto the driveway. Grandma's rental car was parked behind the police cruiser. I paused and looked back. Valerie was standing in the doorway, framed by the light of the house she had stolen. She looked small. She looked angry, but she also looked exposed. The police officer stayed behind on the porch, talking to her. I saw him pull out a notepad. I saw Valerie cross her arms defensively. She is not done, I said to Grandma as I climbed into the passenger seat. Neither are we, Grandma said, starting the car. She thinks she just lost a prisoner. She does not realize she just armed the prosecution. As we drove away, I watched the house disappear in the rearview mirror. I touched the phone in my pocket. I touched the bruise on my face. I was hurt. I was tired. I was homeless. But I was free. I moved 300 miles south, crossing the state line from Colorado into New Mexico. But the real distance I traveled was measured in more than just highway markers. I traded the suffocating beige walls of my father's house for the sun-baked adobe of Grandma May's small home in Albuquerque. My new world was a single room with terracotta tile floors and a ceiling fan that clicked rhythmically, like a slow, steady heartbeat. Click, whir, click, whir. It was the sound of safety. The bed was piled high with quilts that smelled of real lavender, not the synthetic, headache-inducing candles Valerie used to burn. For the first 3 weeks, I did not do much of anything. I slept. I slept for 12 hours at a time, my body finally crashing after years of running on cortisol and adrenaline. I would wake up, eat the soup Grandma May left on the nightstand, and stare at the dust motes dancing in the shafts of sunlight. It was a quiet, primitive existence. Grandma did not push me. She did not ask for details. She just sat in the living room knitting, her presence a solid, unmoving anchor. She drove me to the urgent care to have my ear checked because the ringing had not stopped since the slap. The doctor told me I had a minor perforation in my eardrum. It would heal, he said. But every time I swallowed and felt that pop, I was reminded of the kitchen floor in Aurora. Grandma also drove me to the community center twice a week. I sat in a plastic chair in a circle with 5 other women and a counselor named Sarah. It was there, in a room that smelled like floor wax and stale coffee, that I learned the language of what had happened to me. Sarah used words I had never heard before: coercive control, gaslighting, financial abuse, isolation techniques. "It is not just about the hitting," Sarah told us one afternoon. "The hitting is the punctuation mark at the end of the sentence. The abuse is the sentence itself. It is the rewriting of your reality until you do not trust your own mind." I sat there, gripping my knees, and felt a door unlock in my brain. I was not crazy. I was not too sensitive. I was a survivor of a systematic dismantling of my personality. Ava called me on FaceTime every other night. She never asked the stupid questions. She never asked why I stayed so long or why I did not fight back harder. She just looked at me through the screen, her face close to the camera. "What do you need today?" she would ask. "Do you need me to tell you a joke? Do you need me to be quiet? Do you need me to remind you that you are a badass?" "Remind me I am not useless," I whispered one night. "You are the smartest person I know," Ava said immediately, "and you are going to bury that woman. Just wait." I took that energy and funneled it into the only thing I could control: my future. I transferred my credits from the community college in Colorado to an online paralegal program. I spent my days at the kitchen table, surrounded by textbooks on tort law and civil procedure. I studied with a hunger that scared me. I was not just learning for a grade anymore. I was learning for survival. I also got a job. It was an entry-level position at a local firm in Albuquerque called Beacon Row Legal Services. It was not a high-powered corporate gig. It was a dusty, quiet office full of filing cabinets and the smell of old paper. My job was to archive closed cases. I spent 8 hours a day scanning documents, organizing files, and shredding duplicates. It was repetitive work, but it was education by osmosis. I read everything. I read about divorces where husbands hid assets in shell companies. I read about children who used their power of attorney to drain their elderly parents' savings accounts. I read about forged deeds and coerced wills. And as I read, I started to see Valerie. I saw her in the husband who claimed he was protecting his wife by taking her credit cards. I saw her in the daughter who told the doctors her mother was confused, so she could make medical decisions for her. I saw the patterns, the isolation, the control of information, the sudden urgency to sign documents. One Tuesday evening, Grandma May came into the kitchen carrying a plastic storage bin. She looked tired. Her hands were trembling slightly as she set the box on the table. "Maddie," she said, "I have been meaning to sort through this. It is the house paperwork, the insurance, the deed, the taxes. Since your grandfather passed, I have just been tossing everything in here, but with everything that happened with Valerie, I feel like I should know what is what." "I can do it," I said, pushing my laptop aside. "This is what I do all day." I started sorting. I made piles: insurance, utilities, tax assessments, junk mail. Then I found it. It was a thick envelope from a bank I did not recognize. I opened it. Inside was a document titled Notice of Intent to Refinance. It was dated 6 months ago. I frowned. "Grandma, did you try to refinance the house last year?" "No," Grandma said, looking up from her tea. "Why would I do that? The house is paid off. Your grandfather paid the mortgage off in 1998. "This says you applied for a home equity line of credit," I said, my heart starting to beat faster. "It says you wanted to take out $50,000 for home improvements." "I never did that," she said firmly. I turned to the last page. There, at the bottom, was a signature: May Whitaker. It looked like her signature. It had the same loop on the M and the same sharp slant on the W, but there was something off about it. It was too shaky in some places and too firm in others. It lacked the natural flow of a hand that had written that name 10,000 times. I stared at it, and suddenly, I was back in the hallway in Aurora. I was staring into the open safe. I saw the stack of papers Valerie had tried to hide. The practice sheets. Rows and rows of signatures. I grabbed a magnifying glass from Grandma's sewing kit. I looked closely at the document. "Grandma," I said, my voice low, This is a forgery. A good one, but a forgery. I went through the rest of the box like a forensic investigator. I found 3 more letters. One was a credit card application in Grandma's name that had been denied. Another was a change of address form, requesting that Grandma's bank statements be sent to a P.O. box in Denver. A P.O. box in Denver that I recognized. It was the same P.O. box Valerie used for her real estate business. I sat back in my chair. The air in the kitchen felt electric. "She has been trying to steal your house," I said. "She has been trying to steal your identity. She was not just trying to cut you out of my life, Grandma. She was trying to liquidate you." Grandma May's face went pale, then red. She did not cry. She got angry. "That woman," Grandma said, her voice shaking with rage, "sat at my table. She ate my food, and she tried to take the roof over my head." "We are going to stop her," I said. I did not sleep that night. I spent the next 48 hours building a war room in Grandma's kitchen. I scanned every single piece of paper in that box. I created a digital filing system on a secure cloud server. I named the folder Valerie, Pattern of Control. I gave Ava the password. "Upload everything you have," I texted Ava. The screenshots, the text messages where she cancels plans for me, the dates, everything. The next day at work, I knocked on the door of Mr. Klein's office. Mr. Klein was the senior partner at Beacon Row. He was a man in his 60s with messy white hair and a suit that always looked slightly rumpled. He was kind, sharp, and had noticed that his new file clerk was overqualified. "Mr. Klein," I said, standing in his doorway, "do you have a moment? I have a hypothetical situation I need to ask about." He took off his reading glasses. "Come in, Madison. Sit down. I have a feeling this is not hypothetical." I sat down. I told him the story. I did not use real names at first. But halfway through, I stopped pretending. I told him about the slap. I told him about the phone. I told him about the forged signature on the refinance application. Mr. Klein listened without interrupting. He tapped his pen against his desk. When I finished, he leaned forward. "Madison," he said, "this is not just a family dispute. This is fraud. This is elder abuse. And if she has done this across state lines, using the mail to commit fraud, it is a federal offense." "I know," I said, "but I cannot prove she signed it yet. I need to protect the house first." "Smart," he said. He pulled a legal pad toward him. "Here is what we are going to do. You are going to bring your grandmother in here tomorrow. We are going to draft a revocable living trust." "A trust?" "We move the title of the house out of her name and into the trust," he explained. "We make you and your grandmother the co-trustees. That means nothing, absolutely nothing can be sold, mortgaged, or borrowed against without both signatures. It locks the asset down tight." "And the credit?" I asked. "We freeze it," he said. "We put a fraud alert on all 3 bureaus, and we file a police report for identity theft regarding that loan application. You need a paper trail." The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork, but this time, it was not the paperwork of a victim, it was the paperwork of a warrior. I sat next to Grandma May as she signed the trust documents. I watched the notary stamp the page. Clunk. It was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. It sounded like a gate slamming shut in Valerie's face. We sent letters to every bank, every credit card company, and the Social Security Administration. We built a fortress around Grandma's life. And as we worked, I started to change. When I first arrived in New Mexico, I was looking for safety. I just wanted to hide. I wanted to disappear into the desert and never hear Valerie's voice again. But every time I found a new piece of evidence, a credit inquiry I did not recognize, a bill for a credit card Grandma never opened, something hard and cold began to form in my chest. I looked at the Valerie, Pattern of Control folder on my laptop screen. It was growing. It was a map of her cruelty. I realized then that Valerie was not just a mean stepmother. She was a criminal. She was a predator who preyed on the tired, the old, and the lonely. She had preyed on my father's grief. She had preyed on my desire to be a good daughter. She had preyed on Grandma's distance. She thought she was untouchable because she operated in the shadows of family business. She thought no one would ever look closely at the receipts. I looked at the screen, at the scanned image of the forged signature. She thinks she got away with it, I whispered to myself. She thinks because we left. She won. I closed the laptop with a snap. I did not think about revenge at first, I said to the empty room, practicing the opening statement I would one day make. I just wanted to be safe, but then I saw what she tried to do to my grandmother, and suddenly, revenge started to look a lot like fairness. I was not just scanning papers anymore, I was loading ammunition, and I was going to make sure that when we finally fired back, we would not miss. The silence broke on a Tuesday afternoon. 4 months after I had fled Colorado, in the back seat of my grandmother's rental car. I was sitting at my makeshift desk in Grandma May's living room in Albuquerque, cross-referencing a stack of property tax records, when my phone vibrated. It was not a text from Ava. It was not a notification from the court docket. It was a group message. The sender was Valerie. The recipients were me, my father, Grandma May, and Savannah. I stared at the screen, my heart doing that familiar, panicked flutter before I forced it to slow down. I was not 21 and locked in a room anymore. I was 22. I was a paralegal, and I held the keys to a cage she did not even know she was standing in. I opened the message. It was written with the frantic cheerfulness of a woman trying to sell a multi-level marketing scheme. Hi, family. I know it has been a while, but Robert and I have some huge news to share. We have made some big decisions about the future of the family estate, and we want everyone to be part of the celebration. We are hosting a dinner this Saturday at 7:30 at the Monarch in Aurora. Grandma May, we will fly you up. We really need to talk about the New Mexico house. It is just too big and dangerous for you to manage alone. And we have found a wonderful buyer. Let's turn that dusty equity into a fresh start for everyone. Love you all. I read it twice. The audacity was breathtaking. She was not asking if she could sell Grandma's house. She was announcing that she had found a buyer. She was framing the liquidation of my grandmother's only asset as a benevolent act of safety, calling the house dangerous and dusty, and the phrase "share the money" hung in the air like a bad smell. She meant she was going to take the money, pay off the debts she had racked up in my father's name, and buy herself a new life. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was the private group chat I had with Ava and Grandma May. Grandma May, did you see this? She thinks she is selling my house. She thinks I'm senile enough to just sign the deed over dinner. Ava, the Monarch? Is that not that overpriced steakhouse where they charge $50 for mashed potatoes? I am booking a flight. I am not missing this. I typed back, do not reply yet. Let me talk to Mr. Klein. I stood up and walked to the window. The New Mexico sun was bright and harsh, stripping away all the shadows. Valerie had made a critical error. She assumed the landscape of the battlefield was the same as when I left. She assumed Grandma May was a confused old woman, and that I was a scared, broke student. She did not know that for the last 16 weeks. We had been pouring concrete around Grandma's assets. Mr. Klein and I had finalized the revocable living trust 2 months ago. The deed to the Albuquerque house was no longer in the name of May Whitaker. It was in the name of the May Whitaker Family Trust, and the terms of that trust were ironclad. No asset could be sold, transferred, or leveraged without the notarized signatures of both trustees. The trustees were May Whitaker and Madison Whitaker. Valerie could scream, cry, and manipulate my father all she wanted. She could find 10 buyers. She could print out the sale contracts, but without my signature, that house was as immovable as a mountain. Furthermore, we had placed a code red fraud alert on Grandma's credit file with all 3 major bureaus. If Valerie tried to open a credit card, a loan, or even a store charge account in Grandma's name, the bank was required to call a specific phone number to verify the identity. That phone number belonged to me. We had effectively cut off her oxygen supply, and she was about to walk into a dinner thinking she was about to feast. I went into the office the next morning and showed the text to Mr. Klein. He read it and let out a low whistle. She is bold, he said, taking off his glasses. She is trying to force a sale through social pressure. She thinks if she gets everyone at a nice table with wine and appetizers, your grandmother will be too embarrassed to say no. She wants a signature, I said. She probably has the papers in her purse already. So, what is the play? Mr. Klein asked. We can just mail her a cease and desist. We can send her a copy of the trust deed and tell her to go to hell. No, I said. I felt a cold resolve settle in my stomach. If we send a letter, she will spin it. She will tell my dad that I manipulated Grandma. She will tell him I am stealing his inheritance. She will play the victim in private, and he will believe her because he is tired and weak. I looked Mr. Klein in the eye. I need him to see it. I need my father to sit at a table and watch her lie, and then I need him to watch me prove it. Mr. Klein smiled. It was a shark's smile. So we are going to dinner. We are going to dinner, I confirmed, and I need you to come, as a family friend. You knew my grandfather. It is not weird. I would not miss it for the world, he said. And I will bring a +1. Do you remember Detective Harris? The retired investigator who helped us trace the IP address on those fraudulent loan applications? The one who looks like he eats concrete for breakfast? That is the one, Mr. Klein said. He has taken a personal interest in your stepmother's creative accounting. He would love a steak. I went home and started the preparations. This was not a dinner. It was a deposition. I printed 3 copies of everything. The first file was the trust dossier. It contained the deed transfer, the trust agreement, and the affidavit of authority. This was the shield. The second file was the fraud dossier. It contained the credit alerts, the rejected loan applications with the forged signatures, and the side-by-side handwriting analysis I had paid for using my first 3 paychecks. This was the sword. The third file was the darkest. It was the assault dossier. It contained the transcript of the 911 call from that night. It contained the police report. And it contained the photos. The photo of my bruised wrist. The photo of my swollen face. The photo of the lock on the guest room door. I laid them out on my bed. They looked like weapons. Ava arrived in Albuquerque on Friday night. She stormed into the house like a hurricane, throwing her bag on the sofa and pulling me into a hug that knocked the wind out of me. I swear to God, she said into my hair, if she looks at you the wrong way, I am flipping the table. I have been practicing. I have good upper body strength now. No table flipping, I said, pulling back. We have to be cold. Ava, we have to be ice. If we scream, we look like the crazy ones. That is her game. She wants us to be emotional so she can be the concerned mother. We are not going to give her that. I showed her the dress I had bought. It was black, high-necked, long-sleeved, and tailored to within an inch of its life. It was severe. It was the kind of dress you wear when you are firing someone. It is perfect, Ava said. It says, I am not here to be liked. I am here to be obeyed. We flew to Denver the next morning. The flight was bumpy, turbulence shaking the plane as we crossed over the Rockies, but I didn't feel it. My mind was rehearsing the script. We met Mr. Klein and Detective Harris in the lobby of a hotel near the restaurant. Detective Harris was a large man with a shaved head and eyes that seemed to scan for exits and weapons automatically. He shook my hand. I have seen the file, Miss Whitaker, he said. His voice was gravel. You have done good work. Most people do not keep receipts like this. I learned from the best, I said. Or rather, I learned from the worst. We gathered in the hotel room for the final briefing. It felt like a heist movie, except we weren't stealing anything. We were returning reality to its rightful owners. Okay, here is the run of show, I said, pacing the floor. We arrive at 7:30 sharp, not early, not late. Valerie will try to separate us, Mr. Klein noted. She will want to sit next to May to pressure her. We do not let that happen, I said. Ava, you are on Grandma's left. Mr. Klein, you are on her right. I sit across from Valerie. I want her to have to look at me. Got it, Ava said. Grandma. I turned to her. She was sitting in the armchair. looking elegant in her navy blue suit, but her hands were twisting a handkerchief. "You have the hardest job." "I do not know if I can do it, Maddie," she whispered. "I am not an actress." "You do not have to act," I said gently. "At first, I just need you to be quiet. Let her talk. Let her think she is winning. Let her spin the story about how the house is a burden and how you are confused. If she asks you something, just say, 'I am not sure,' or 'whatever you think is best, dear.' Make her confident." "And then?" Grandma asked. "And then, when I put the papers on the table," I said, "I need you to drop the act. I need you to look her in the eye and tell her exactly what you want. Can you do that?" Grandma May took a deep breath. She looked at the folder in my hand, the one with the forged signature. Her eyes hardened. "She tried to steal my husband's legacy," Grandma said. "Yes, I can do that." "But," I continued, "your job is documentation. Phone on the table, face down or propped against a glass, but recording. If things go south, if she lies, if she threatens us, I want it on tape. Colorado is a one-party consent state. We are legal." "I am fully charged," Ava said, patting her clutch. "Detective Harris," I said, "you are the wild card. You are just a friend of Mr. Klein. You are there to eat a steak and look intimidating. But if she tries to leave, or if she tries to deny the fraud, I will remind her of the statutes regarding interstate wire fraud," Harris said with a grim smile. "I love that part." "And you, Madison?" Mr. Klein asked. "What is your role?" I walked over to the mirror. I looked at myself. The black dress was sharp. My hair was pulled back in a tight bun. My makeup was minimal. I did not look like the girl who cried in the attic. I looked like the woman who was about to burn the attic down. "I am the prosecutor," I said. "I am going to let her lay out her entire plan. I am going to let her commit to the lie in front of my father, and then I am going to dismantle her, piece by piece." I picked up the 3 files. "I have a mantra," I told them. "If I start to get angry, if I start to shake, I am just going to repeat it. You beat me. You hid my phone. And you tried to erase my grandmother. Tonight, that stops." I checked the time. It was 7:10. "Let's go," I said. "I believe we have a dinner reservation." We took 2 cars. As we drove through the streets of Aurora, passing the strip malls and the suburban developments, I felt a strange calm. For 3 years, Valerie had controlled the narrative. She had been the author of our family story. She wrote the chapters where I was crazy, where Dad was weak, where Grandma was senile. She wrote the dialogue. She set the scenes. Tonight, I was taking the pen. We pulled into the parking lot of the Monarch. It was crowded with luxury SUVs. Through the front window, I could see the warm glow of the chandeliers. I saw my father's car parked near the entrance. He was already inside. He was sitting there, likely nursing a drink, waiting for his wife to tell him what to do and what to think. I stepped out of the car. The air was cold, typical for Colorado at night. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with it. "Ready?" Ava asked, coming up beside me. "Ready," I said. I walked toward the heavy wooden doors of the restaurant. I could feel the weight of the files in my bag against my hip. They were heavy, but it was a good weight. It was the weight of the truth. I pushed the door open and stepped into the warmth. The hostess looked up, smiling. "Welcome to the Monarch," she said. "We are meeting the Whitaker party," I said. My voice did not shake. "They are expecting us." They were expecting the victims. They were expecting the sheep to come to the slaughter. They had no idea that the wolves had just walked in the door. The restaurant was called the Monarch, located in the upscale Cherry Creek district of Denver. It was the kind of place that charged $60 for a steak, to compensate for the fact that the panoramic view was actually just a glimpse of a parking garage obscured by heavy velvet curtains. The tables were lit by battery-operated candles that flickered with a synthetic, repetitive rhythm. It was expensive, impressive on the surface, and completely hollow underneath. In other words, it was the perfect habitat for Valerie. We were seated at a large round table in the back corner. I sat next to Ava, with Mr. Klein and Detective Harris on my other side. We looked like a business meeting that had accidentally crashed a family reunion. At 7:35, the heavy double doors swung open. Valerie walked in first. She was wearing an emerald green dress that fit her like a second skin. Her hair sprayed into an immovable helmet of golden waves. She moved with the confidence of a woman who had already spent the money she was planning to steal. Savannah trailed behind her, looking bored and glued to her phone. And then there was my father. He looked smaller than I remembered. He was wearing a sports coat that was slightly too trendy for him, clearly purchased by Valerie. He looked tired. His eyes scanned the room anxiously until they landed on us. When he saw me, his face softened with relief. But then he saw the two strangers in suits next to me, and the confusion set in. "Madison!" Valerie cried out, her voice pitching up to a theatrical volume that turned heads 3 tables away. "Oh, I am so glad you made it." She rushed over, bypassing me entirely to swoop down on Grandma May. She wrapped her arms around my grandmother in a hug that looked more like a wrestling hold. "Oh, May," she cooed, loud enough for the waiter to hear. "We have missed you so much. We just want the best for you, only the best." Grandma May sat stiffly in her chair. She did not hug back. She just endured the squeeze and adjusted her jacket when Valerie finally let go. "Hello, Valerie," Grandma said. Her voice was cool, dry. Valerie finally turned to the rest of the table. Her eyes flicked over Mr. Klein and Detective Harris. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she plastered it back on. "And who are your friends?" she asked, pulling out the chair opposite me. "We will get to introductions in a moment," I said calmly. "Please, sit down." Dad sat next to her. "Hi, Maddie," he said softly. "You look grown up." "Hi, Dad," I said. I wanted to reach out and take his hand, but I kept my hands folded on the table. "I am." Valerie wasted no time. We had not even ordered appetizers before she launched into her pitch. She signaled the waiter to bring a bottle of champagne, then clasped her hands on the white tablecloth. "So," she began, beaming at Grandma May. "As I mentioned in the text, Robert and I have been doing a lot of thinking. The market in Albuquerque is hotter than it has ever been, and frankly, May, we worry about you in that old house. It is too big. It is a burden, and with the repairs it needs, well, it is just dangerous." She reached into her oversized designer tote bag and pulled out a thick stack of papers clipped together. "I took the liberty of speaking with a few friends at the bank," Valerie said, sliding the papers across the tablecloth toward Grandma. "We can do a cash-out refinance to get some liquidity now, or we can sell outright to a developer I know. He is ready to make an offer today. All we need is your signature to get the appraisal started." I watched the papers slide across the table. I saw the yellow sticky notes flagging the signature lines. I saw the edge of a document where a signature, one that looked suspiciously like my grandmother's shaky hand, had already been filled in on a witness line. I reached out and placed my hand firmly on top of the stack. Valerie froze. Her smile didn't drop, but her eyes went dead. "Madison," she said, a warning tone creeping into her voice. "This is grown-up business. Let your grandmother look at the papers." "She does not need to look at them," I said. "Excuse me?" Valerie laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Robert, tell your daughter she is being rude." Dad looked uncomfortable. "Maddie, honey, Val is just trying to help. She knows real estate." I did not move my hand. I looked Valerie dead in the eye. "Dad," I said, "I would like to introduce you to my guests. This is Mr. Klein. He is the senior partner at Beacon Row Legal Services, and this is Detective Harris, formerly of the Denver Police Department's Fraud Division." The air was sucked out of the room. Valerie's smile vanished. She pulled her hand back from the papers as if they were burning. "Lawyers?" she hissed. "You brought lawyers to a family dinner? What is wrong with you?" Mr. Klein leaned forward. He had a gentle, grandfatherly demeanor, which made his words hit even harder. "Mrs. Whitaker," he said politely, I am here representing May Whitaker. He turned to Grandma May. May, I want to ask you a direct question. Do you want to sell your house? Grandma May sat up straighter. She looked at my father. Then she looked at Valerie. No, she said. Her voice was not loud, but it was clear as a bell. I have never wanted to sell my house. It was built by my husband. I intend to die in that house. Valerie flushed a deep, angry red. May, you are confused. We talked about this. You said you were overwhelmed. You told me I was overwhelmed, Grandma corrected. I never said it. She is senile, Valerie said to my father, her voice rising. Robert, look at her. She does not know what is good for her. That asset is wasting away. That asset, I cut in, reaching into my bag and pulling out the first manila envelope, is no longer accessible to you. I slid the document out. It was the trust agreement, stamped and notarized. 2 months ago, Grandma transferred the title of her home into the May Whitaker Family Trust. I explained, I am the co-trustee. That means nothing gets sold, nothing gets refinanced, and nothing gets borrowed against without my signature. And Valerie, you will never get my signature. Valerie stared at the document. She looked at my father, panic starting to twitch at the corner of her eye. Robert, did you know about this? They went behind our backs. After everything I do for this family, I manage the bills, I manage everything, and they cut us out? We did not cut Dad out, I said. We cut you out. Detective Harris cleared his throat. It sounded like rocks grinding together. He placed a single sheet of paper on the table. It was a photocopy of the loan application Valerie had submitted 6 months ago. Mrs. Whitaker, Harris said, my associates in the Financial Crimes Division have been looking into this document. It is a request for a $50,000 home equity line of credit on the Albuquerque property. It is dated last October. He pointed a thick finger at the bottom of the page. That is a signature that purports to be May Whitaker's, Harris said. But forensic analysis shows a 99% probability that it was signed by the same person who signed the check for this dinner deposit. Dad picked up the paper. His hands were shaking. Valerie? He asked, his voice small. What is this? It is a mistake, Valerie snapped, though beads of sweat were starting to form on her hairline. It was just paperwork. I was just getting things ready in case she needed the money. I never took the money. Because the bank rejected it, I said. Not because you didn't try. You are twisting everything, Valerie screamed. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I have been the only one holding this family together. I took care of you, Robert. I took care of your ungrateful daughter. And this is how you thank me? By ambushing me? Sit down, Valerie, I said. I will not, she yelled. Come on, Robert, Savannah, we are leaving. These people are insane. Dad did not move. He was staring at the loan application. I said sit down, I repeated. My voice was not loud, but it had an edge that I had honed in the last year of reading legal briefs. Because we are not done. We haven't talked about the night yet. I do not know what you are talking about, Valerie said, but she sat back down. She looked trapped. I pulled out the second envelope. This was the heavy one. The assault dossier. I spread the photos out on the white tablecloth, right next to the breadbasket. The first photo showed my face, swollen and red, the bruise blooming across my cheekbone. The second photo showed my wrist with the crescent moon nail marks. The third photo showed the heavy deadbolt on the outside of the guest room door. And the last document was the transcript of the 911 call. My father looked down. He saw the picture of my face. He made a sound that was halfway between a gasp and a sob. What is this? He whispered. That is from the night I left, I said. 3 years ago. She ran into a door, Valerie cried out. She was desperate now, her eyes darting around the room. She was hysterical. She was throwing things. I had to restrain her for her own safety. Read the police report, Dad, I said. I pointed to the highlighted paragraph. Officer notes. Victim was found locked in a windowless room. Lock was a single-sided deadbolt installed on the exterior. Victim exhibited clear signs of blunt force trauma to the left zygomatic arch. Victim's cellular device was recovered from a locked safe in the hallway closet. Suspect claimed victim was acting out, but could not explain the exterior lock. Dad read the words, locked, safe, trauma. He looked up at me. His eyes were wet. You were locked in? She hit me. Dad, I said. I kept my voice steady, though my heart was pounding against my ribs. She heard me talking to Grandma. She got angry. She slapped me across the face hard enough to perforate my eardrum. Then she twisted my arm, took my phone, put it in the safe, and locked me in the guest room. Lies! Valerie slammed her hand on the table. She is a liar. She has always been jealous of me. She wanted to ruin our marriage. Ava spoke up for the first time. She held up her phone. I was on FaceTime with her, Ava said. I saw her face before you walked in the room. It was fine. Then the line went dead. And 20 minutes later, when the cop sent me the photo, her face was not fine. I called 911, Mr. Whitaker, because I knew if I called you, Valerie would answer. Savannah, who had been silent the entire time, looked at the photos. She looked at the picture of the deadbolt. Mom, Savannah said, her voice trembling. Why is there a lock on the outside of the guest room? Shut up, Savannah, Valerie snapped. Savannah flinched. It was a small reaction, but it spoke volumes. She had seen that anger before. It was for safety, Valerie insisted, turning back to Dad. Robert, she was sick. She was having a breakdown. I was protecting her. And now look at her. She comes back here with fancy lawyers and fake pictures. She is doing this for money. She wants to blackmail us. I do not want your money, I said. I pulled out the final piece of paper. It was my bank statement and my lease agreement. I work full-time, I said. I pay my own rent. I pay my own tuition. I have not taken a dime from you or Dad in 3 years. I did not come here for a payout. Valerie, I came here to make sure you never touch Grandma's house, and I came here so my father would finally know who he is sleeping next to. The table went silent. The only sound was the low hum of conversation from other tables and the clinking of silverware. My father sat there, staring at the photo of my bruised face. He looked at the police report. He looked at the forged loan application. He slowly lifted his head and turned to look at Valerie. For the first time in my life, I saw the fog clear from his eyes. The exhaustion was still there, but the blind devotion was gone. Valerie, he said. His voice was hoarse. Robert, please, Valerie started, reaching for his hand. They are ganging up on me. You know me. You know I love you. He pulled his hand away. Valerie, he repeated. Did you hit my daughter? I had to restrain her. Valerie stammered. Did you slap her face? Dad asked. She was screaming. Did you lock her in a room? Dad asked. He stood up. He was not a tall man, but in that moment, he looked massive. Did you lock my child in a box? I did what I had to do, Valerie screamed. I was managing the household. I was taking care of everything because you were too weak to do it. The confession hung in the air. I did what I had to do. She realized too late what she had said. She covered her mouth with her hand. Dad looked at her with a look of absolute revulsion. It was the look you give a stranger you find in your house holding a knife. I believed you, Dad whispered. For 3 years, I thought she abandoned me. I thought she hated me. But you drove her out. I did it for us, Valerie sobbed. For our future. We have no future, Dad said. He reached over and picked up the trust documents. He picked up the police report. He folded them carefully and put them in his pocket. Then he looked at me. Maddie, he said, I am so sorry. He did not ask for forgiveness. He knew he hadn't earned it yet. He just acknowledged the sin. Valerie looked around the table. She saw Mr. Klein's stony face. She saw Detective Harris taking notes. She saw Savannah edging her chair away from her. She saw the ruins of her empire scattered across the white tablecloth. She stood up again, snatching her purse. "Fine," she spat. "Fine. You want to take her side? Go ahead. See how you survive without me. You cannot even pay the electric bill without me. Robert, you are pathetic." She turned to Savannah. "Savannah, let's go." Savannah looked at her mother. Then she looked at me. Then she looked at the photo of the bruise. "No," Savannah said. "Excuse me?" Valerie froze. "I am going to stay," Savannah said, her voice shaking but firm. "I want to hear the rest." Valerie stood there for a moment, her mouth opening and closing like a fish on land. She had lost the house. She had lost the money. She had lost the husband. And now, she had lost the daughter. She let out a sound of pure, frustrated rage, spun on her heel, and stormed out of the restaurant. The silence she left behind was heavy, but it wasn't oppressive. It was the silence of a fever breaking. I looked at Dad. I looked at Grandma. I looked at Ava. "Well," Ava said, picking up her menu, "now that the trash has taken itself out, I believe I promised myself a $50 steak." The scraping of my father's chair against the hardwood floor sounded like a gavel striking a block. It was a harsh wooden screech that cut through the murmur of the restaurant. He did not stand up to follow his wife. He pushed his chair back just enough to create distance, as if he needed physical space to breathe the same air as the truth. He looked at his hands, then at me. His face was gray, stripped of the false youthfulness Valerie had tried to dress him in. "Believing Valerie was easier," he said. His voice was quiet, but in the silence of our table, it carried the weight of a confession. "If I believed her, I just had a difficult wife. But if I believed you, Maddie, if I really let myself look at that bruise, then I had to admit that I had failed my child. I had to admit that I left you alone in a house with a monster because I was too tired to fight." He looked up, and tears were finally spilling over, tracking through the lines of his face. "I chose the lie because the truth was too painful to look at. I am so sorry." It was not a poetic apology. It was clumsy and raw, but it was the first time in 3 years that I saw my father, the real one, not the puppet Valerie had constructed. He was looking at me not as a problem to be solved, but as a daughter who needed protection he had failed to provide. Grandma May reached out and placed her hand over his trembling fist. Her touch was firm. "You did not fail forever, Robert," she said sternly but kindly. "You are not a failure. You just chose the wrong person to listen to. You were lonely, and she preyed on that. But tonight, you have a chance to fix it. Do not waste it." Valerie was still standing near the edge of the table, her chest heaving. She looked from my father to Savannah, waiting. She expected the old dynamic to kick in. She expected them to scramble to comfort her, to chase after her, to validate her victimhood. But nobody moved. Detective Harris cleared his throat. He did not look at Valerie. He looked at his notebook, tapping it with a pen. "Mrs. Whitaker," Harris said, his voice heavy with authority, "just so you are aware, while we are not placing you under arrest at this dinner table, the file regarding the loan application has been flagged with the state attorney. Any further attempts to use May Whitaker's name, social security number, or property for financial gain will be met with an immediate felony warrant. We are watching." Mr. Klein leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "And from a civil standpoint," he added, his tone conversational but deadly, "any retaliation against Madison, any harassment, any attempt to sabotage her employment or her reputation, will result in a restraining order and a defamation suit that will bankrupt you. We have the documentation. We have the timeline. Do not test us." Valerie looked at the wall of legal threats. She looked at the physical evidence spread across the table. She realized, perhaps for the first time in her life, that she could not manipulate her way out of this. She could not cry her way out of a forensic handwriting analysis. She could not gaslight a police report. She was cornered, and she knew it. In a final spasm of rage, her face twisted. She lost the composure of the socialite and became something feral. "You ruined this family," she screamed at me. pointing a shaking finger. "We were happy. We were perfect. You just could not stand it. You poisonous little brat." She turned her back on me and looked at my father and Savannah. She straightened her spine, assuming the pose of the matriarch one last time. "I am leaving," she announced. "Robert, Savannah, come with me. We are going home." She waited. She stood there for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. The silence stretched so tight I thought it might snap. My father did not move. He kept his hand under Grandma May's. He did not even look at Valerie. He looked at me. Savannah sat frozen. She looked at her mother. Then she looked down at the photo of the deadbolt on the table. She picked up her water glass and took a sip. Her eyes fixed on the ice cubes. She did not stand up. The decision was made. It was not made with a speech. It was made by the screech of chairs that did not move. It was made by the two people she thought she owned, simply deciding to stay seated. Valerie made a noise in her throat, a strangled sound of disbelief. She realized she was the only one standing. The army she thought she commanded had defected. She spun around and marched toward the exit. Her heels clicked furiously against the floor, a staccato rhythm of defeat. She pushed through the heavy double doors of the restaurant. Ting! The little brass bell above the door chimed softly as it closed behind her. To anyone else in the restaurant, it was just the sound of a customer leaving. To me, it sounded like a gavel banging down. It sounded like the final note of a song I had been stuck in for 3 years. It was the sound of an ending. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding since I was 21. Savannah turned to me. Her face was pale, her makeup slightly smudged. She looked young, without Valerie beside her to direct her. The mean girl veneer crumbled, leaving just a confused teenager. "I believe you," Savannah whispered. Her voice shook. "I saw how she treated you. I saw the way she looked at you when Dad wasn't looking. I didn't want to see it. I am sorry I didn't say anything sooner." I looked at her. I did not feel a surge of warmth. I did not want to hug her. The years of isolation were too real to be erased by one apology. But I saw the effort. I saw the crack in the cycle. "Believing me is the first step," I said, nodding slowly. "I appreciate that, Savannah. But the rest of it? The part where you figure out who you are without her whispering in your ear? That is work you have to do yourself." She nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I know." Grandma May picked up her water glass. She looked around the table, at my broken but awakening father, at my fierce best friend, at the lawyers who had become my army, and at me. "To the girls," Grandma said, lifting her glass. "To the girls who are called dramatic, to the girls who are called difficult, to the girls who are told they are too much just because they refuse to be silent." Ava raised her glass of wine. "Here, here." Dad lifted his glass of scotch, his hand shaking slightly. "To Madison," he whispered. We clinked glasses. The sound was bright and clear, ringing out over the table. Ava leaned over and squeezed my knee under the table. "Hey," she murmured, a smirk playing on her lips. "Next time we orchestrate a dramatic family takedown, can we pick a place with better bread rolls? These are like hockey pucks." I laughed. It was a real laugh, starting in my chest and bubbling up until my shoulders shook. It broke the tension in the room like a hammer through glass. I looked around the table. I looked at the evidence files, now just stacks of paper. I looked at the empty chair where Valerie had sat. I thought back to that night in the guest room. I remembered the feeling of the carpet against my cheek. I remembered the absolute, crushing certainty that I was alone. I remembered thinking that my voice had been taken, locked in a safe in the hallway closet. I looked at the imaginary camera one last time, speaking directly to you. She hit me and she hid my phone. She thought that by taking the device, she was taking the power. She thought that if I could not dial a number, I could not fight. She forgot one thing. She forgot that power isn't in a device, it is in the people who love you. She forgot that my voice wasn't in the phone she locked in the safe. My voice was in the best friend who knew my silence was a scream. My voice was in the grandmother who stood on a porch and refused to move. My voice was in the stranger who saw a signature that didn't look right and decided to ask why. She tried to bury me. She didn't know I was a seed. And now, I have a question for you. Yes, you, listening to this in your car, or your kitchen, or your bedroom in the dark. If there is someone in your life who tries to take your phone, your story, or your reality, if there is someone who tries to rewrite your history to make themselves the hero and you the villain, I want to know what you are going to do. Tell me what city you are listening from, and tell me honestly, will you choose option A, where you stay silent and let them tell the story for you? Or will you choose option B, where you find the people who believe you, you gather your receipts, and you build a life so strong and so loud that no one can ever lock a door on you again? Thank you so much for listening to my story on Lila Revenge Stories. Please comment below with your city and your choice of A or B. I really want to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and hit that hype button so more people can hear the truth.